Hello, everyone. My name is Melih Ozbekoglu. I'm a principal product manager / tribe lead at Letgo. Today, I'll be talking about some principles and methods you can use as a product manager to increase the motivation of your Agile team and make them more engaged and committed. But let me start with a brief introduction of myself. I studied computer engineering at Bilkent University in Turkey and had my master's degree there too. And after graduation, I started to work as a developer at the beginning and then moved into product management. And I had a product management experience in different levels and in different industries like B2B products or C2C marketplaces in several companies in Turkey. And then more than 2 years ago, I joined Letgo. Letgo is a C2C marketplace with a focus on mobile. And I joined there as a senior PM at the beginning. And now, as a tribe lead, I'm leading a group of product managers to provide a best-in-class marketplace experience. As you can see, I'm coming from an engineering background, and in my career as a product person, my engineering background helped me a lot in order to establish a balanced relationship with the development teams. And today, I would like to share some principles and methods that helped me and my teams throughout my career with you. First, let me introduce some common Agile team or squad structures. I assume these are familiar concepts to most of you, and the ones who are familiar with Spotify's model can easily notice the similarity. It all starts with a squad that is responsible for a user journey, or sometimes with the whole product. These squads may include several people with different roles, like product managers, designers, data engineers, like data folks, like data scientists, and data analysts. And also, you can see that most of them are generally engineers. And the structure may change in different companies from company to company. For example, in startups, there is mostly one team that does it all, whereas in bigger companies, there are multiple teams. Sometimes they are gathered under a tribe, like we have in Letgo, for example, based on a strategic pillar. Sometimes they are scattered around. But also the types of roles in these teams change too, from the domain that they're operating in. But one thing still remains, but one problem is still common. That's the classic question. How can we perform better? What's the right way to do it? This is a common question for almost all the teams and all the companies that I've seen and I know of. I'll try to address these in today's speech. And I will start these with introducing some questions, actually. While searching for an answer for these, I would like to start with these questions. And these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves as product managers in order to improve our team, our approach to product development. I will start with the first one, maybe, and this is the most important one. Are we working on something very valuable? And is everyone in the team aware of it? This is also the follow-up one that is related to that one directly. This is super relevant with the product teams, but you can also apply this to other teams and disciplines as well. Empowered, high-performing teams need motivation for sure. And no one wants to be just work on something that without knowing where they go to, where they aim for, what they aim for, and without motivation. And as you can see in this, also in this image, in this video, no one wants to be growing slaves. And they will need to be motivated. And especially the developers need to know that they have a direction. And they are actually they need to know that they're actually working on something that brings value. And actually, that's the reason that most of the developers are also developing some stuff for free in the open source software. Well, in order to address this issue, they need to be sure that in order to make them sure that they're going in the right direction, there are multiple methods. And I think OKR framework is a great tool for that. And this is how we are also trying to achieve this in Letgo. The squads normally periodically and quarterly define their objectives and key results based on the company and tribe level objectives and key results. I will not go into that much detail about the OKR framework here. And also, you don't have to use it. You can use another framework or methodology if you like. But keep in mind that the important part is to have a measurable goal so that you can see the progress, which I will come to that later, and to have a solid product strategy. So having a solid product strategy is the essence of proper product development. And It's not like today's discussion, like in this session, but you can, especially, I would strongly recommend you to take a look at Marty Kagan's articles on Silicon Valley product groups insights blog. And there are also multiple resources and books around it. And this is where the problem starts normally. And most of the companies, normally when we talk about the roadmaps and plans, they tend to list a bunch of projects in their roadmaps. Not goals, not problems to solve, mostly like they are projects and initiatives. And this is the thing that we need to avoid. And by the way, don't worry that this will not be another like seminar that shows this like famous video of Simon Sinek for a million times. I actually added the link, but you can take a look at it later also. But the important thing is like you need to convince your teammates that they are working on something valuable. And as I told, like don't prioritize the problem, don't prioritize the project to solve. Prioritize problems at the beginning so that you can come with the solutions with the team. Normally, like the items in your backlog should contribute to the team goals. And if applicable, it will be good for you to link the items with your OKRs that you defined or any other goals or structure that you use. And start when we are expressing what you are going to build with the teams, you start with why all the time. Explain the motivation behind why we are doing it, like show them numbers, show the qualitative data, the user feedback. Don't have a pile of random projects saying that, oh, we need to do this. Why? Like you need to be able to answer to that. Second one, very, very relevant one also. Are we making an impact? Are we showing the progress? Are we showing any progress? This is something that people ask and should ask themselves all the time. And setting the goals is important, and it's the first step, and a very, very important one. However, it's not enough. Throughout the time in your, like, whether you are doing quarterly roadmaps or like half a year, 6 months or so, as you're progressing, your team should also be aware that you are making an impact, you are making a change, or like if you're not, you should take actions upon it. In order to achieve this, actually, like in your periodic meetings, you can share the progress. Like this is a great tool for, like this is one of the practices that we have been trying to do. In your periodic, like bi-weekly or like monthly Scrum rituals, you can show up-to-date numbers to show where you are, maybe in sprint reviews and so on. You can show like where you are in terms of your goals, like what do you need to get there. Also, it will be a great discussion to have with the teams. So with your engineers, you can discuss what you need to get to reach your goals. What's the next problem to tackle in order to reach them? And it's also a good practice for them to get involved in like this goal setting process and like to come up with solutions for that. Also, another good practice that I've seen in the past is to let engineers show the things they build to the stakeholders, managers, and if applicable, sometimes like to customers and end users. I think it's a great opportunity for them to see the user reactions and get direct feedback from them. And that would help them empathize more. So that would increase their level of empathy. And you can see that sometimes they voluntarily work more, like push harder and try to solve the problems. And also another good thing is that it also provides visibility. It's an opportunity for them to get some recognition there, which can also increase the motivation. But there is something that you need to be careful while doing that. Like not all the engineers have the tendency or desire to do these, like to do demos and proactively join the meetings and so on. But also in every like development team, there is one or two maybe like engineer which are willing to do this. So you need to select the right ones or like get some volunteers for that. Maybe do some rotations. Also, you don't want to create an extra workload, extra meeting for them, especially when they are very busy. Then most of the people don't like meetings, of course. There is a sweet spot in between, but I think that you will be able to see it in time. Another important thing that I would like to highlight. So a good question to ask, is this really the agile way that you're working? Or are we working in a waterfall fashion that looks like agile, that we dressed up as agile? So this is a very important side as well. Like in today, like we stand to say that we are agile, we are following agile practices, which we are doing Scrum, like we are doing the Scrum rituals, like the meetings and so on. However, is it really like that? And I see like many people are essentially doing little mini waterfalls within their Scrum framework. By mini waterfalls, I say that the product manager does some kind of requirements work. They bring the requirements to the designer, and designer then do the designs, and that comes up with the final versions of them. And then it comes to the development team. They build it and test it. And even like in some teams, there are some testers and after the development. So like basically in some teams, like we are seeing that we are doing actually mini waterfalls inside sprints. And however, like this is not the agile way for sure. And the developers should be involved in the product discovery and even in the design process. And the solutions should be presented to them, not the problems. Like you should normally like the solutions are presented to them, not problems. But when you start to initiate and present the problems to them, then and then evolving the product discovery and this design process, you can see that they can come up with some solutions that is beyond your imagination sometimes. Like they are working on these like products for a long time, and you can see some really good examples, these solutions out of them. I think a nice way to solve this problem is a concept called dual track Scrum. And this is something that we also try to apply in Letgo. And in this dual track Scrum method, like there are actually, like we actually run 2 concurrent sprints in one sprint in the same time. And as you can see in this, like in these charts, normally there is a discovery sprint and delivery sprint, these 2 concurrent sprints. And normally we are all familiar with the delivery sprints, like we all build things during the delivery sprints. The difference is here about the discovery sprints. While the developers are working on the tasks for the delivery sprint, we all run in parallel a discovery sprint, which is normally led by the designer and the PM. And the goal of this discovery sprint is to define what comes next for the upcoming delivery sprint. So we also aim to go 1 sprint ahead. I will go into detail with the next slide. So we talked about like adding the engineers involving the engineers in the product discovery process in here, and think of like a discovery sprint before the delivery sprint. You are going to deliver something. You are going to build something in the next delivery sprint, which will start in 2 weeks. But now in this current sprint, you are actually starting a discovery sprint, and during this discovery sprint, we apply the double diamond methodology, in which with the engineers, we actually start to understand the problem and define what the problem is and explore solutions then, and like narrow down the options and create the solutions together as a design. And in the next delivery sprint, we start to build them. So this is how we do it. We introduce the problem in the sprint planning. And mostly this is the person that does this is product manager, with also that reasoning behind with the data and so on. With the designer, they start to come up for the preparation for the first refinement meeting. And in the first refinement, the designer comes up with a set of possible solutions with low fidelity design sometimes, just to start to initiate the conversation so that people can see some tangible things. And in this like refinement meetings, the development team gives feedback, look for problems, sometimes like propose new options, new ways to solve these things. And the product manager and designer takes this input and they shape up the solution in more detail. And in the second week, sometimes like we do guerrilla testing and other design activities to get more inputs, insights from this from the users also sometimes. And then like the development team in the second week, in the second refinement meeting that we have, we come together, the team agrees on a solution, and the flows are defined. Like if there is a doubt, the developers ask questions about the details, and then the goal here is to have all the details defined, so that we don't leave many things for the sprint planning, which is the topic for the next slide. Well, does the sprint planning meeting take too long? Like this is a question that we need to ask too. Well, the best sprint planning actually is a short span. This is what I see. And actually, like normally, on contrary to the common belief, the sprint planning meeting is maybe the least important meeting among all of them. And the best one is the shortest one indeed. And I remember like some effective sprint plannings lately that took less than 30 minutes, and like maybe sometimes like 10 minutes of them I were chit chatting. So like these are the effective ones. I actually recommend to not to spend too much time in meeting rooms. Of course, this was before COVID. Not now in Zoom rooms, don't spend too much time, and no one wants to spend the time on meetings. Developers can use the time before before the sprint planning to estimate story points and assign story points and estimate things. And this can be asynchronous also. It doesn't have to be synchronous right now. And when we have everything, the estimations, every details discussed, and it's just a matter of like placing items according to your velocity, it becomes quite easier. And why we are against these like long sprint planning meetings, like no one loves meetings, especially the developers, that they don't like it all. And these long sprint planning meetings reduce the productivity. I remember the times like in past companies, we had long sprint planning meetings that we spent like 4 hours in a 2-week sprint and so on. And I can say that this is a total waste of time. Also, I would like to share one great article in here by Paul Graham, which actually compares the schedules of like managers and the makers. And here, the makers are mostly the developers. And I really recommend you to take a look at it. Well, last but not least, the final question. How are we going to set a goal and push the team further? Well, this is something that we ask ourselves a lot as product managers. Sometimes we talk with the engineering managers. How can we make it? How can we like do more things in the sprint and so on? How can we push the team further? Well, actually, don't push the team. I really love that image from the Groundhog Day. And thanks to Jeff Odell, a great product person that shared this lately, and I'm taking it directly from him. So there, I remember conversations like, can we add this also into the sprint? Can we add that into the sprint? It's really important and so on. But like with a motivated team, which is aware of goals, actually you should never require that. And like that's why like we're talking about all these OKRs and stuff, the goals and the motivating people. But of course, like there are a lot of factors in the human natures, in the teams, in the companies. So that there may be some times that you need to do it. But like if you need it, if you really need to do it, I recommend you to have some allies in the team. Or sometimes like this person can be an engineering manager in the team, like can be a lead developer and so on. But you really need someone from the engineering team to initiate these conversations, to push the teams. And you can be the good cop in that conversation. And then the engineers can take the ownership of it. And also last part about this like sprint goal part is that sometimes like it's really hard to put a sprint goal. Like you need to keep a few things in mind when you are setting a sprint goal. First of all, like the sprint goals should be something to increase the collaboration team within the team. There can be multiple tasks inside the sprint that the team develops. However, setting something as a sprint goal means that in case of emergency, in case of need, like someone else in the team should stop also what they're doing if it's not related to the sprint goal and take a look at what's really important to reach that. So ideally it should be a common goal for the whole team. But also it's sometimes challenging, and especially if you have teams with multiple platforms, like if you have teams with developers from multiple platforms, in iOS, web, and Android. Sometimes like the schedules or the plans can be different. Sometimes one platform goes ahead a little bit, they have another task to do. Sometimes on the other, they don't. So, and also like for designers, there can be another goal also. So like in order to solve this, we also set different goals for different roles in the team. And for example, one for iOS, we can set up a different one. For Android, we can have a different one. For backend, we can have a different one. Or also designer, we can have a different one. And also like the important thing is like to set the most, like when we have these like multiple goals, you can still like pick one from them. And you need to you can set the most important one as a team goal. And how are you going to set which one is important? Let's go back to the OKR part, like to see which one is important, like to see like which one is more related to our goals. Then it will be somewhat trivial. Well, thank you for listening. Actually, I hope you find this presentation useful, and thank you. I thank you for the time that you spent in here. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter through the information that I shared in here. Have a nice day. Goodbye.